2, 3, 4 toes. But it's not a very fresh track. It's quite hard. We've had some misty mornings. I guess it's probably from maybe yesterday or the day before. So a nice fresh track would be much easier to see. It would be really clear. So that's one of the ways we find animals, is to follow their footprints. So that track's not very fresh, so we're not going to follow it. Now, if we found a fresh track, then you'll see me get much more excited than I normally am, and I'm quite an excitable guy, especially when I'm out looking for animals in the bush. Good spot for him. And the other way, and quite often the most important way we find animals, is using our ears. So lots of different animals make different noises, and a lot of animals, especially animals like we've been seeing so far, impala and zebra and wildebeest, if they see a lion or a leopard, they want to tell everyone that they've got to be careful, that there's a potentially dangerous predator around. So they snort. So an impala will go, and if you understand impala, what the impala is saying is leopard, 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 or lion. And so different animals, when they start making different noises, often lets us know if there's a big cat in the area.
And find evidence of basically history of this area and what happened here at some point in the last few months. Now, we're sitting in one of the most beautiful spots, looking across at the stunning view of all of the trees. Now, I'm going to jump out and I'm going to show you what you were looking at there, because I think it might be a bit confusing and difficult for you to see exactly what that was. So, over here, nice to get out, stretch one's legs. Always important to check around us, make sure that there aren't any animals hiding away behind the bushes. But here is what we were looking at, or what we started by looking at, and this is actually a piece of bone. Now, very important that you don't touch any bones unless an adult says that it's okay. But this is part of, believe it or not, this is part of a skull, and probably the skull of an animal like that nyala that we saw earlier. Now, in America you have deer. Deer have antlers instead of horns, and antlers are actually made from hardened blood vessels, which means that once a year they can drop off and then grow again the next year. Now, our antelope are very different. So this is actually the horn of the antelope, and this horn is made of solid bone. Now, something has come through, something killed the nyala. It could have been a leopard, a cheetah, a lion, anything like that. But there's an animal that comes behind and has very strong teeth and has actually eaten most of the skull. So all of the front of the skull is missing, and if you look really carefully, you can see where the teeth of this particular animal have scraped away at the bone. And that was most likely, remember we spoke about one of my favorite animals to find, most likely that was a hyena that was gnawing on this bone. They've got incredibly powerful back teeth and very powerful jaws. So a hyena could easily bite through a piece of bone in just one bite, just closing its mouth, very strong muscles. So they're capable of making use of things that lions and leopards can't chew through. So this is what's left of a nyala. Nice to stop and just have a look at the different things that we can find. But I'm going to return it to the earth, because there are also lots of different things out here that will be able to make use of it and to help break it down. So I don't want to deprive anything. There's no wastage out here in the African bush. So there's something that eats pretty much everything. So even though it's very sad when an animal gets killed and is hunted, at the same time, it doesn't get wasted in any way. And even a skull portion like that could actually serve as a really useful home. Let's say if a chameleon, how many of you have heard about chameleons? Well, we get them here, and if a chameleon wanted a safe place to lay its eggs, to lay her eggs, then they might actually choose to pop it in there. Now, oh, here's something else to show you. I'm going to hop out one more time, but while I do, Chris, you were wondering, hello Chris, I hope you're enjoying our safari. You were wondering about what is the animal that we see the least. Well, there's some animals that I know that we get here, but that I have never seen at all, and something like a pangolin. A pangolin kind of looks like a scaly anteater. It is a scaly anteater. Now they are here because I've seen their footprints and other people have seen them, but I've never ever seen a pangolin before while I've been here, or since I've been working in this area. This is what I stopped to get you. This is a snail shell. The snail is no longer alive. If it were alive, this shell would be a deep brown color. But you can see that this snail has now died. Maybe it got attacked by ants, or perhaps it just didn't quite get enough to eat. But this snail is one of the examples of what might eat what's left of a carcass. So this is called an African giant land snail. It's all filled with dirt now. There's definitely no snail hiding in there. But an African giant land snail is actually a carrion eater. In other words, it's a scavenger, like a vulture or a hyena. It will go and it will find carcasses and it will feed off them. Another little treasure that we found just in the last few feet of driving. There's plenty to see out here. And again, I'm putting it back just in case there's something that wants to come and live there. There's a couple of different animals that we hardly ever see. We're very lucky. We get to see lots of leopards and lions on a regular basis, and things called wild dogs, and sometimes even hyena. But there's all kinds of things that we look forward to seeing. Now, unfortunately, we have come to the end of Kempville's Elementary's safari. I hope you've all had a wonderful time, and that we will see you once again on the back of our safari vehicle. Have a good rest of your school day, and I hope to see you again in the future. So from myself and Brent, and both Jean-Andre and Dave, bye-bye, and have a wonderful day. Oh, and of course, it's not poor Dave on camera this afternoon, is it? It's with Brent. It's VM. Sorry, VM. Oopsie. I got confused. Wonderful news from Cameron, who is 6 years old and Maddie's brother. Cameron, you want to know if there are any scorpions about. Unfortunately, Cameron, not at the moment. They're all sleeping in their holes right now, underground, because we're in winter now. They're not hibernating, but they're doing what's known as estivating. So Cameron, we're going to have to wait probably until, unless there's a bit of rain, maybe it gets nice and warm unexpectedly, we're probably going to have to wait till around August, September, before we start to see more scorpions. But they are here and they are around. And I'm very, very happy to hear that Dyson, named after, of course, the great Scott Dyson, that Dyson the iguana is doing well and is very happy. I am thrilled to hear it. Well done, Cameron. I'm sure you are taking really good care of him. And Cameron, we'll keep an eye out for scorpions for you. You just have to keep watching. And I'm sure that both Brent, myself, James and Sam will all look for scorpions. And whenever we see one, we will always, always think of Maddie. Right. Let us see if I can get hold of Herbert, see if he's had any success. Hopefully he hasn't been trying to reach me while I was wandering about off the vehicle. Herbert for Jamie. might actually
Jamie, who are you looking for?
Sorry, Quibus, just looking for Herbert.
Okay, sorry. Herbert coming by.
How's it going, Info? What's your position?
I'm still in the block between Djuma and Silmon's cut line. The tracks are coming up and down by the block. She might have crossed Philemon to the west.
Copy that. I'm checking along Zoe's road now. I didn't see anything on Philemon's, but there was lots of traffic up and down there, so they might have driven over it. Herbert's discovering
Did you drive
what it's like
on,
to
Rebecca?
track our Queen of Djuma, Karula the leopard. That's affirmative. I drove Philemon's cut line. I'm checking Zoe's now, and then I'll check Rebecca's.
Copy, thanks.
When Karula is hunting, I've had at least 3 different experienced trackers come to me and say that Karula is one of the most difficult leopards they have ever tracked before. She has this uncanny ability, and I'm sure it's a hunting strategy that she obviously utilizes, but she has this absolutely uncanny ability to pick a direction, and then you'll lose her tracks for a while, and all of a sudden you'll find her tracks again, walking at 90 degrees to where she was walking before, or sometimes even at 180 degrees. So she's turned right around and is going in completely the opposite direction. So it's a matter of, she keeps you guessing, certainly. And one day, when I come through here, one day, she will be lounging in this beautiful Balanites tree, just waiting for us, with that delicate expression of insouciance that she wears so well. But not today. One day there will be a leopard in this beautiful leopard tree. And not just James trying to climb it. We're going to continue to help Herbert out, see if we can't figure out where she's gone. In the meantime, let's find out how Brent's exploration of Cheetah Plains is going.
Okay, so the male leopard we are scouring for. Unfortunately, no sign of the cheetah, but it is a firm favorite of a lot of our viewers out there. It's the quarantine male. I heard he crossed at the end of the sunrise safari this morning into this area here, and as you can see, it's not ideal. Very thick, but I'm hoping Mr. Q is going to be lying up in a tree where we can see him, or he's going to be heading towards Cheetah Plains Pan for a trek as it gets a little closer to sunset.
Peter Kummer forward. Verder gebeurt. Van het meer. Jan in Djuma. Je is kanaal van ons daar weer. Ja, maar op.
Okay, so and look at this gorgeous light. We now just need a leopard to fill it. So no quarantine likes marulas. He also loves termite mounds. So we're checking every single one. So John, hi John. John is in the UK. John is wondering what is the latest on the wild dogs. So as far as I know, the Investec pack is hanging around their old den site in the Manuleti. The Sands pack have denned on a property called Arathusa to the far west of us. And that's the update from the wild dogs so far, John. So they have not been around. We have had tracks of a pack that have come in from Kruger, which might be a pack we don't know, but the tracks came in and out here on Cheetah Plains in the morning. So by the time we found the tracks and by the time we got to the end of the tracks, the dogs were already gone back to the KNP. Now, Jilly has posed quite the difficult question. And that is, why do birds in the warmer climates and out here seem to be more brightly coloured than ones in the cold climates? Jilly, I think with birds, I think it depends more on the individual species, and they've developed certain colours for different reasons. A lot of birds need to attract a mate, and I think that's the main reason for gaudy colours. And birds that don't need that gaudiness to attract a mate tend to be a lot more dull. So, and I'm speculating heavily here, but I couldn't give you a definitive answer on that. But I would think it's more to do with the individual species and their evolution in terms of mating than it is to do with the climate that they're in. Although you do find a lot more brightly coloured birds where it's warm, maybe just because it's warm, and everyone's slightly brighter and happier when you're warm, in my general experience, or I can only speak for myself, who's bitterly morbid when it is very cold. Come on, Mr. Q. I know you're in here somewhere. So he's in not the biggest block. We think he's between this little 2-track here called Pipeline and Owl's Nest and the Pan. Now, it isn't the biggest block, but it's also a very thick block, which makes it quite a challenging one. I'm really hoping he decides to meander down towards the waterhole for a drink, but if he doesn't, it seems to be the elephants here come and drink at the Pan a little bit later in the evening. So Aaron in New Zealand's wondering if I've ever seen a male leopard bigger than the Anderson male, and I haven't. I went and looked back at some of my photographs of the biggest male I'd seen prior to Anderson, called the Camp Pan male, and looking at pictures of them at about the same age, Anderson is bigger. I hate to admit it, because Campy was one of my favourites. Still was one of my favourites. He is unfortunately passed on. Interesting enough, the Camp Pan male is the oldest documented male leopard recorded excuse me, in the wild. Let's hope it's not one of those bouts of 25 sneezes for the next while. Well, I'll take the sneezes if they bring Quarantine out to come have a look what's making a noise. Lots of dust in the air at the moment. Come on, Mr. Q, come have a look at what's sneezing. Just checking very carefully here. Sorry, I'm not speaking, I'm about to sneeze again. My record was about 26, but hopefully it doesn't go on that long. So we're coming out to the Cheetah Plains Pan again. And I'm hoping this is the only water around here, so he might come for a drink. But alas, no leopard just yet. Just, my nose! A single wildebeest bull, and it's Gnorman's nemesis. But I'm going to sneeze again. So before I do, let's go across the journey very quickly.
One lone wildebeest starts to settle down for the evening. We've got our dwarf mongoose all ready for bed, just watching us, or they were watching us curiously. Now the funniest part of this sighting for me was the fact that this little guy actually got stuck as he was trying to climb into that hole and trying to go down head first and turn around at the same time, and it didn't work out all that well for that particular mongoose. Oh. Look how much younger the one on the right is than the one on the left. That's a sub-adult dwarf mongoose. Yes, that's where you got stuck. Don't make the same mistake again. Oh! Another head popping out. I love watching them at this time of day. You get to see them bonding with each other, and at the same time they're not quite as lazy as they are first thing in the morning when they're busy sunbathing, waiting for the sun's warmth to heat them up a little bit after a chilly night. And they're also incredibly vocal. And that brief glimpse of that mongoose on the road actually really gives you a sense of scale of just how tiny these little creatures are. Somebody taking a chance at last-minute foraging before it gets too dark and it's time to retreat to bed. The noises I'm making are just meant to ever so slightly imitate dwarf mongoose contact calls. Gets them to focus on us ever so slightly every now and again. Now, this little mongoose is covered in cobwebs and as a result has picked up all kinds of grass seeds. And that's very common to see them with spider webs all over their faces because, of course, the spiders make a home, will make their webs inside these termite mound vents, and the dwarf mongoose go crashing through them. It also gives you a really nice opportunity to look at just how long the claws of a dwarf mongoose actually are. Oh, budge up, try to get out there. Of course, all of those tunnels interconnected. They can run between entrances. One will disappear down one hole and reappear up out of another. And I think they're actually currently deciding if this is where they're going to spend the night or if they're going to pick another spot further on. It looks as though this particular termite mound vent is winning. Bright beady eyes, pink noses. We retreated to that sighting of the African wildcat a couple of mornings ago. It was exceptionally exciting. And Kat, in Tampa, you were wondering if an African wildcat would hunt baby dwarf mongoose, would hunt adult dwarf mongoose as well, Kat. So it would hunt both of them. An African wildcat is generally never going to dig a dwarf mongoose out from inside its burrow. And what they'll do is they'll wait and they can ambush them just like it ambushed that scrub hare while we were watching it with great patience, indeed demonstrating far more patience than Liam and myself did, because we honestly thought that it had forgotten all about the fact that it was hunting. So a dwarf mongoose, definitely on the menu of a wildcat. They will, however, most likely eat around the anal gland, because dwarf mongoose do have a very, very strong smelling anal gland. Another animal that hunts dwarf mongoose in particular as a hunting practice is young leopards. And that's something when we saw Shadow's son with his very first live kill, the very first thing that we'd seen that he clearly killed himself, was a dwarf mongoose that he wasn't all that interested in eating, but he was clearly interested in playing with and moving around and battering about, just practicing that coordination that he would need as an adult leopard The baby leopards, leopard cubs, very often hunt dwarf mongoose and squirrels alike. Small, manageable little prey species. All of our dwarf mongoose have now disappeared off. They've decided that this termite-bound burrow is not the place to be. Joyce, who is watching in New Hampshire, you were wondering whether or not mongoose are part of the rodent family. And Joyce, no, they're not, although if you go far enough back, there's a very similar ancestral link between the two. Mongoose are actually part of what's known as the Herpestidae family and are more closely related. You're in New Hampshire, Joyce, so I'm sure you've heard of, obviously maybe even seen, things like pine martens, ferrets, ermines, anything like that. Those are all related more closely to a mongoose than mongoose are to rodents. So the Herpestidae family. And there's also an animal out here that kind of looks like a mixture between a mongoose and a cat, and that is a genet. Now that's actually something I forgot to mention, but the fact that Dave and myself had a really lovely large spotted genet sighting on our way home last night. It was very late, it was way past the end of drive, so we couldn't go live with it. But we did have a very nice sighting, and that's linked. At one point the mongoose were actually thought to be part of the genet family, part of what's known as the Viverridae. I was going to stop, sorry, I got distracted by a fork-tailed drongo that was actually happily trilling away, imitating the sound of one of the other birds out here. But it flew away as soon as I stopped to have a look at it. So the vivarids, in other words the genets, and the mustelids, so things like honey badgers, and then the Herpestidae family, the mongoose family, are all closely related but different families completely, so very distinct families. Now they are all, what was that? Sorry, hold on everyone, I don't know what that was, but I think it might have been a hyena. Something dashed across the road very far in front of me. And of course this is the region where we're looking for Karula, but it wasn't feline. Could have been a Dacre, but I doubt it. You saw that as well, Jean-Andre? Yeah. Crossed somewhere here. Oh, what was that? We spend so much time watching things like antelope run and getting so used to the standard visual shape of what we see on a day-to-day basis, that something like that immediately attracts one's attention, because it was not antelope shaped, and it was not felid shaped, and it dashed across the road so quickly. And I'm just going to concentrate on seeing if I can't spot it. It was too big for a jackal, in my opinion, but it was clearly something very shy. The reason I raced like I did, there's always that small off chance we might bump into a brown hyena. It's happened once before. Might be pushing it to try and wish for it to happen now, but you never know. Stranger things have occurred. We saw an African wildcat recently, but I can't find it, and it was so clearly running away. I think that whatever it is feeling particularly, or is particularly skittish or camera shy. Don't know. I have no idea where it went. Crossed somewhere close to where I am now. And I am checking for tracks at the same time, but I don't know. It's difficult to gauge distance. I don't know exactly where it ran across the road. This could end up being forever a mystery. Definitely not Karula. I'm not even sure what I was talking about before I spotted that run across the road. But I'm not completely mad because Jean-Andre saw it as well. There definitely was something here. I think we've gone a bit far. What we'll do is we'll cut through onto the road that runs into this drainage line and across it. Maybe there's a chance we might spot whatever it was over there. Oh yes, we were talking about, I remember now, we were talking about the three families that are very closely related to each other, the Herpestidae, the Viverids and the mustelids. And what I was going to say is that they're all unified by a very common structure, or the structure of the anal gland that is common to all three of those different families. Also very similar to that of the hyena, but ever so slightly different. And the mongoose and the genets, all of them use it as part of their scent marking that they perform. So that is one of the big unifying factors between them. I wonder what that was. I also want to make sure that I don't... Oopsie, we appear to have lost our antenna there. You good? Are you okay there, Jean-Andre? Our antenna just fell backwards, managed to unhook itself. It's back up. Of course, we have to, every now and again, we have to have that level of flexibility because we have to be able to bend the antenna backwards. This is the one last patch. If we have missed Karula's tracks, or if Karula's tracks have been driven over on Philemon's cut line, this is the one road where she might have popped out. And we're checking exceptionally carefully to make sure that we don't miss her tracks as evening starts to fall and as she starts to move about. While we look really carefully, first of all for Karula and second of all for our mystery animal that went sprinting across the road, let's find out what Brent is up to now.
So, we know quarantine's around, but he's in that really thick block. So what we've done, we've decided to take a nice peruse across the plains again. See if we can spot something. The wildebeest and zebra have moved deeper into Mara. And I just heard a report, very interesting, and unfortunately just to the north of our boundary here at Cheetah Plains, but there's two young male lions, unknown and very skittish from the vehicles. So obviously just moved in from Kruger. Who knows, maybe they'll come south. Temperature's dropping quite quickly. Makes me wonder whether shorts were a good idea today. Well done, Marilyn in Montana, who got the bird quiz. I think this is one of the tougher ones I've given you, but indeed, Marilyn, the African pipit it was. Remember I said look at the color of the legs and very, very bold facial markings. We couldn't really see, but that yellow base to the bill is sometimes distinct. Sometimes it's not that obvious, but there we go. An African pipit. That should be a new one for a few of our birders out there. So well done, Marilyn in Montana. So apart from buffalo, zebra, wildebeest and a steenbok, Cheetah Plains has been a little bit quiet, but it has the potential to change any second, and that's why it's always worth that little trip down the road. You never know what's around the next corner. And in this case, it's a beautiful open clearing with puzzle bush, combretum, and low-felt albizzias. This is the first sunset safari I've been down here, and we haven't had those big Eddie bulls coming out from Kruger. Maybe they'll be here tomorrow. So those young male lions were about there. That it is a cheetah stick. Graham and I have seen a few cheetah sticks today. Once we stopped, zoomed, binoculars, everything, we were like, oh, stick. It was quite disappointing. And I think I know for sure final control, and Wiem's most entertaining part of drive was my sneezes. I could hear them cackling on the radio. Evil, evil woman. So I think we should give Final Control a new nickname. What do you think, Fem? The Hyena Den. I was going to go with Shagabafaz, the red-billed woodhoopers. The Zulu name for a bird out here, the red-billed woodhooper, is hyena. Shagabafazi, the cackling woman. So why don't you guys let us know what we should call FC from now on. Wim votes for the Hyena Den, and I go for Shagabafaz, the cackling woman. So let me know which you would prefer that we call Final Control, and you can pop us an email on questions@WildEarth.tv or use the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. What are you shouting at, Mr. Go Away Bird? Where are you actually? Can't see him. He's in this very large false marula somewhere. Can you see them, Vim? They're somewhere in that big tree. Ah, you got him. I've got them. So come out to the left a little bit. I'm sorry, to the right, at the left. Keep coming. There, zoom in there. Center front, there we go. There it is. The grey go-away bird. Oh, off it flaps. Or we could call Final Control the grey go-away birds. Or the arrow-marked babblers. Off them and I on a roll. Franklin alarm calling behind us, and we know there's lion and leopard in the area. It could just be a slender mongoose, but let's have a look anyway. We probably follow on average about 50 Franklin alarm calls to one cat sighting, but it's always worth checking. Disappeared through there somewhere. That's where the alarm calls were. Just having a quick, careful look. Now all is silent. Nope. Nothing out there, unfortunately, but as I said, it's always worth just checking. And as I say, 50 to 100 Franklin alarm calls, we go check. There's nothing there. It could be a mongoose, it could have been a predatory bird just skimming through, but 1 in 100 turns into a leopard. Raymond, who's in the Netherlands, who's looking at his own map, is wondering where I'm driving. Raymond, I am on Kestrel Road in the far eastern or northeastern corner of Cheetah Plains. I'm about to come up to the junction of Kestrel and Ingwe Road. And we're going to do one last gander past that Cheetah Plains Pan area and up around Pipeline towards 3 in a row to see if quarantine comes out of that thicket. So we got a comment from Joanne. I don't think VM and I are going to agree with this, Joanne, but I will put it through anyway. And I think Final Control is filtering what's coming through to me on this particular subject. Joanne says, well, she agrees with Hyena Den because they control everything anyway. Well, you see, they might be the hyenas, but us, the cameramen, the presenters, we're the lions, so we can beat up hyenas when we want to. We're definitely, and you know what, we let them be, rather than asserting our dominance. We just let them scuttle about. So I've actually, I don't ever do this, but I'm going to tell you what I just heard in my ear. Ha ha ha. But now across to Jamie with the buffalo.
Oh well, Brent's been busy mocking the poor ladies of Final Control. Jeandra and myself have been very busy scouring the area. and we've come upon a large breeding herd of buffalo rustling their way through into the evening. We've got one young male watching us with great intent, such intent that he's forgotten about the mouthful of grass that he has. Still looks a little bit confused as to what he should do with it. Yes, there we go, almost, there we go. Nope. Still watching us too closely. It sort of looks like it's almost idle the way that we sometimes pluck a blade of grass and chew on it. Come on, boy. You can't stop watching him now. We're going to wait for him to eat that mouthful of grass. Yes? No? Oh. There, you see, you've got to take a lesson from the ladies. She knows what to do with a mouthful of grass. Hello, boy. You can finish your mouthful, I promise. He's got a slight glaucoma almost to his eye. His right eye is a little bit swollen and bulging. Doesn't look terribly comfortable. It does occasionally happen with buffalo. It's one of the reasons why you sometimes see them with those big cataracts. Oh, it's a scary time for buffalo as darkness starts to descend, and this herd will be looking to find a nice open spot, quite possibly quarantine clearings again, to spend the night in. They don't really want to be hiding here when it does get completely dark. Many months ago, Brent and myself were both in this area when the Nkuhumas were hunting a herd of buffalo right close to where we are now. It turned out to be an exceptionally intense sighting, with the buffalo fighting back and chasing the lions. You never know, there could well be lions moving behind them. This morning on the sunrise safari, Brent had the Tsalala Pride, or as I was caught out saying this morning, the Tsalala Pride, just because that's the nickname that we've started to give them. Didn't quite realize that you were all on the back of the vehicle with me. I was caught unawares. But they were very, very close to the boundary of Arathusa and Shirley's. We suspect that they would have crossed. That's why we haven't followed up with them this afternoon. But with a herd of buffalo like this, walking through an area, I don't want to get any closer and scare them. It's not a huge herd, from what I can hear and from what I can see. But it's very easy for lions to track a herd of buffalo like this. Noisy and smelly. A scent kind of like a dairy farm when you hang around a buffalo herd. There's something exceptionally picturesque about them in the dusty winter's evening light. And if I'm quiet for a moment, you can just hear the rustling all around us. Any kind of antelope and now? Sorry, Addison, haven't forgotten about you. Just having a bit of a showdown between two buffalo bulls, which could in turn lead to a sparring session and in turn lead to broken horns. Now, Addison, we were talking on the school drive earlier about the fact that an antelope horns are solid bones. The same applies to that of, or the head of horns of a buffalo. So if a buffalo horn does break off, no, it will never ever grow back. Sometimes they get damaged and they grow in a strange way, but if it is snapped off completely, it will bleed because it is living bone, and it will probably, actually if it's quite close to the boss, it will be quite uncomfortable for them, but it will never ever be capable of growing back. enjoy a little bit more of the sighting before it does get too dark. It is getting quite dark and we won't shine lights on them. They are diurnal animals, daytime animals, so we don't want to interfere in any way with their nocturnal vision, especially not with the possibility of lions moving about. The Birmingham boys have been scattered everywhere. We haven't managed to track down all of them. We don't want to run the risk of interfering with them any more than necessary. Breeding herds like this provide a nice opportunity to just compare the horns of the females versus the males. So there we go, a big female. You can see that there is, in this afternoon light, you can actually see the tufts of hair on the top of her horns, which are much thinner, particularly at the base, than that of a male. We've got one slightly damaged horn, so there you go, what we were talking about, Addison. Her left horn hasn't grown normally. She's also got some kind of mange or fungal infection on her skin. That's caused that bald patchiness. Oh, buffalo, you're going into a very thick area in which to spend your night. The little calf on the right, that's probably one of the scariest ages for a buffalo to be. A buffalo is the perfect size for a pride of lions like the Nkuhumas to tackle. The Birmingham boys, of course, as proficient buffalo hunters, will tackle something larger. They'll go for the adults. But that's because they've got at least a good 200 pounds of weight. Each male lion is heavier by 200 pounds than the female, so they're capable of taking down buffalo. Now out here in the Kruger National Park, a large percentage of these buffalo, particularly in the southern and the central part of the Kruger National Park, will have tuberculosis as a naturally occurring disease. It only really affects them when something else has weakened them, whether it's through injury or poor diet or age, that they start to really exhibit signs of tuberculosis interfering with them. However, in South Africa it's become a very interesting story, the playing out of the buffalo tuberculosis within the naturally occurring populations, because it jumps very quickly to cattle. There's a big aspect or a big part of South Africa's farming industry is cattle farming, and as a result it had to be exceptionally carefully managed. And what that means is that to the west of us, as we look across to the setting sun, there is something called the red line. And any animal west of that red line, any buffalo, is actually disease-free, does not have tuberculosis. And a huge amount of time and effort was put into separating the diseased versus the disease-free population and keeping them separate from each other. Very difficult. You actually cannot transport buffalo across that red line. What that's meant is that for the disease-free population to the west, some of them have become worth a huge amount of money. And by a huge amount of money, I'm talking 44 million rand was paid for one buffalo bull at auction at one point in South Africa. Can't remember his name. I think his name was Million, and it was one of the most expensive buffalo ever sold. And that was about 2 or 3 years ago. On that exchange, on our exchange rate at the moment, you can work that out to about $3 million would be around roughly what we're looking at. Oh my word, our exchange rate's got quite bad. The South African rand not doing very well. So if you find yourself in the position to come to visit South Africa, and you are in a different country, now's the time. Everything's going to be much cheaper for you. $3 million for one buffalo. And your average cow, disease-free cow, could go for close to R500,000 rand. So again, about, what's that, $30,000? $25,000 to $30,000. They are incredibly valuable animals. It is a bit too dark for us to spend any more time with this buffalo herd. I think we're going to move on. Good luck, buffalo. Hope you see yourselves safely through the night. And on we go. Winter time, which means we've got all kinds of exciting, rare and nocturnal creatures to go looking for. Yesterday Dave and myself saw a white-tailed mongoose and a genet on our way home. We're going to start looking for, those are not rare animals at all. Those are safari guests having a quick stop to stretch their legs and have a sundowner. Beautiful spot they've chosen. Feeling a bit bad about interrupting them, so all of our lights are going to go down. We want to blind the guests. I just need to chat to the guide quickly as we go through. I didn't mean to come and interrupt their drink stop. I'm just going to apologize quickly. Can't drive past without saying hello. That's okay, it's taxing. How's it, guys?
What you got?
No, nothing this afternoon, just buffalo up that side. Sorry, Tax.
Get the secret away.
Sorry to interrupt your drink stop. Beautiful evening. All right, well, welcome to Djuma. Hope you enjoy your stay. Cheers. I'm just going to keep my lights off for now. We don't disrupt their view. Janet, you were wondering on our live drives if we ever encounter any venomous snakes. And we do. On a relatively regular basis in summer, we actually had I had two extraordinary black mamba sightings. Both individuals well over 6 feet in length, over 2 meters, and incredibly relaxed. We've seen spitting cobra before. We have seen puff adders before on the live drive. So lots of the venomous snakes have made themselves known to us in the past. And that's something for us to anticipate. The thing is, because in the low veld our winters are relatively mild, although you wouldn't believe it the way that we complain on a chilly morning, but our winters are in fact relatively mild. And what that means is the snakes of this area generally go into what's known as estivation, which isn't quite as dramatic as a hibernation, and it's more to do with the dryness of the area than it is to do with the cold. And what that means is that even in midwinter we could still enjoy a snake sighting. They will often come out of their hiding holes and come and bask in the sun on the roads or anywhere else in those sorts of areas, just to enjoy a little bit of warmth and possibly even go looking for a snack. And it's the one time where you do actually start to see snakes even more frequently close to the camps and to the houses, more in the houses than anything else. Snakes looking for warmth and also looking for rodents, which are in turn looking for warmth and additional food. Venomous snakes are one of my favorite creatures to see out here. That black mamba sighting that we had was absolutely incredible. And as long as they are treated with complete respect, the chances are relatively slim that you run the risk of antagonizing them and being bitten. And about 90% of snake bites in South Africa have not come from snakes attacking humans, but from people either trying to catch them or to handle them in some way, and in turn being bitten in that process. So if you ever do come to South Africa as a guest, there is no reason to be nervous of snakes. Be aware and treat them with utmost respect. Always carry a torch at night and you will be absolutely fine. There's another venomous creature out here, and that is the scorpion, something that inspires fear in a great deal of people. And we do have a question about what different types of scorpions we get out here. And Mandy, you were wondering about which scorpions we get. We get a couple of different types. We get the Scorpionidae family, and there's lots of different species, from the Opisthecampus glabrifrons, which was one of Scott's favorite scorpion types, which is very similar to a sort of bark type scorpion. Large, they look terrifying. They're huge. They can be larger than my hand, but they've got relatively small tails in proportion to their pincers. They're also exceptionally docile scorpions, which means that you can safely, if you know what you're doing, you can actually safely handle them. They're also very kind in that they hiss, they stridulate to warn you before they even think about stinging. So if you get stung by one of those, it will hurt. It's not comfortable, but there's no risk that you're going to, under normal circumstances, there's no risk to an adult human's life. And then you get the more dangerous species, the Parabuthidae, or the Buthidae species. And there's a couple of different ones that fall into that family. Those are the thick-tailed scorpions. Thick tail, small. The thicker the tail and the smaller the pincer, the more dangerous that scorpion happens to be. The more venomous it is. And those are the ones that you should watch out for. But again, scorpion stings are exceptionally rare out here. And we spoke about it earlier for Cameron, who asked about the scorpions that we get. Most of them are going to be pretty much invisible until we get around August, September time, at the end of winter and the beginning of spring. And Zoe, welcome to the Sunset Safari. You're saying that you don't feel very clued up on the civets and the genets, and you were wondering if they are related in some way. And yes, they're all part, we discussed earlier the mustelids and the viverids. They are all part of the Viveridae family, again unified by the anal gland, so an evolutionary history in that sense. And in quite a bit of their skull structure as well. There's a lot of similarities in their skull structure and their dentition. The difference between civets and genets, however, civets are much larger than genets. They're quite big animals, the size of a sort of European badger. Quite big, quite stocky animals. Similar colouring, but a very different appetite, a very different diet to that of a genet. A genet is quite a fierce little predator and very nimble, very good at climbing trees, and as a result will focus on, similar to a wildcat, hunting little rodents, insects, and various other smaller species, even raiding birds' nests, which is why birds do alarm call regularly at them. Now, a civet will also have a diet that can be based on on insects. And in fact, the only animals capable of eating something called a millipede. Their diet differs ever so slightly. They're not quite as fast or as nimble as a genet. And they also have a very high percentage of berries and fruit in their diet as well, to the point that they could be considered to be, at this time of year, with a lack of millipedes, they're definitely omnivorous. Whereas a genet is largely carnivorous, with the odd supplement to their diet in the form of fruit if they happen to find any. There's two different species of genet out here. There's the large spotted and the small spotted, and they are pretty much indistinguishable from each other, except from the fact that, as the large spotted name suggests, they have slightly larger spots on their coats, as well as the fact that their tail patterning, their tail striping is ever so slightly different. One species having white on the tip and one species having black. Oh, lots of impala about. I'm just going to dim my lights for this individual. Oh boy, you're going to go across in front of me. Yes, no? No? Okay. Alright, thank you. Yes, there we go. As soon as I switched my lights off, you felt more confident to dash across. Here's a lovely question on the subject of baboons that we were talking about earlier. James was wondering about the evolutionary reason behind why baboons have an upright and yet slightly downward curved tail. Now, I could only really guess at what the reason is for that. Maybe it helps with the following for baboon troops to help follow each other. But what I can tell you is that's one of the ways to age a baboon. The older a baboon gets, the more erect the tail becomes and the more pronounced that curve in the tail becomes. Now, that's actually one of the ways that you can start to tell the age of a baboon. In addition to that, males darken in color as they grow older and females get lighter in color as they grow older. Now, I'm trying to think if there's any other evolutionary design, because baboons don't really use their tails in the same way that vervet monkeys do. They don't have the same level of dexterity, really, that the vervets do, but they can still use them to assist and to help them balance when they are climbing trees. But I'm trying to think why they would need that upward curve. Excuse me. Perhaps maybe, James, just a remnant of a time when that tail was a bit more dexterous and a bit more useful in a baboon's ancestral life. But I'm not 100% sure. Okay, well, we go looking for all kinds of mysteries of the evening. Rent has left Cheetah Plains, found some signal, and is on his way home. Let's find out how his evening's going.
Hello, hello! Yes, we're back from the plains of the cheetah. Unfortunately, the young quarantine evaded us, but definitely might be worthwhile following up in the morning. So we're heading down the southern boundary, about to duck into Djuma shortly, and we can see what we can find in the night. I want to check that open area around Twin Dams, the possibility of any little nocturnal carnivores, and maybe even around Chele Pan. There could be something happening there. But we have some traffic on the road. Okay. So while we wait for this vehicle to pass us, hello. John is wondering what is the difference between Djuma and Cheetah Plains' fauna and flora. Wow, John. Mostly from a tree point of view, there are a lot of the similar species. There's more of certain species than other places. Both of them have a lot of red bush willow, but on the slightly sandier soils of Cheetah Plains, you have long-tailed cassia, a very nice tree. But in general, a lot of the same species, but in different spheres. So you will find the bush willows on Djuma are generally a lot bigger, and it's going to get cold there. And there's a certain spot on Cheetah Plains where there's a red soil where the knobthorns and leadwoods are really lovely and large, and you do have a few spots like that on Djuma, but also Djuma's got this, what we've just crossed through here, the Mawati River. So you do have that riverine vegetation, big leadwoods, big jackalberries, big scotias all along the river, which you don't have at Cheetah Plains. But of course on Cheetah Plains you have those open sodic soils. So you have those wonderful short grasses that attract wildebeest, ostrich, cheetah, and even the buffalo and elephant. Let's have a quick look on another sodic site, but not as big, and hopefully we'll find a little nocturnal predator there, and fingers crossed. And as it gets deeper and deeper into winter, those little nocturnal predators are going to start coming out earlier and earlier because it's cooler. I'm still hoping we see a porcupine one of these days. That would be fantastic. So this is this little sodic shortgrass area I wanted to check. Alas, zilch. But Vim and I are being very brave, driving down next to the Mawati River where it's, oh no, just a scrub here on the short grass plains. Have a quick look at him. I'm not going to leave the light on him for too long. There he is. Getting moving, getting grazing. There's some impala also sleeping out in the open here, but we're not going to put the lights on them. Now, if we do have any new viewers there, we do not shine our lights on diurnal species, impala, zebra, giraffe. The light blinds them for a short while if we leave the light on them, and that can make them vulnerable to a predator. And of course, we're here to observe, not to interfere. So we don't want to give the predators or the prey an advantage. We want nature to take place as it should and let it unfold before our eyes. Maybe we can find a little bush baby. That would be wonderful. We've been having some really nice bush baby sightings. Had a lovely one yesterday evening, even though it was very brief. Nice clear view. Of course, you might see some owls. Oh, hello. Sorry about that. Mr. Waterbuck, we'll just leave the light down. You can see this big male waterbuck literally popped out of a guarri bush right next to me. Would have been better if it was a leopard today, not a waterbuck. So hi Jim in Oklahoma, who's been watching for over a year and has never seen an African wildcat. So Jim, I've been guiding here for over a year and I haven't seen an African wildcat. I think the only one of the Safari Live presenters who has been spoilt with a wonderful African wildcat sighting was Jamie, and the cameraman that was spoilt with her is VM, who's sitting behind me. So we've only had one sighting, so we don't see them often at all. But now with this drought and the dry season coming, the chances of seeing a lot of those little creatures we don't see too often definitely becomes greater. So keep watching, Jim, and hopefully we'll find you a wildcat. Ellen's wondering if there have been any accidents with animals on drive. She said that reminded her of a deer dashing out on the road. even if an animal like that dashes out close to us, Ellen, we're never really moving quick enough to have an accident. It's very seldom, and especially at night, that we're going much over about 9 or 10 miles an hour. So no, there haven't been any accidents, and hopefully there will never be any accidents. I don't think there will be. We're all quite conscious, quite careful, and I mean, I just picked up the movement out of the periphery, and we managed to see that water buck before he stepped into the road. Oh, I think it's time for a headgear change. So Lynn, who is on or using the Twitter sphere, there we go, that's much better, now my ears are warm, is wondering, is there going to be an after drive chat on Facebook? And I think yes, tonight, Lynn, there shall be an after drive chat on Facebook. So just give us a little time after we get back from drive and we will do a little chat this evening. And for those of you who don't know where to find the chat, it is on Safari Live's Facebook page, and we will be doing a live chat. So not only do you get a live game drive, you get a live chat afterwards this evening. So let's hope we can find something in the last few minutes. Come on, VM, what do you think? What are we going to find?
Nightjar.
A nightjar. VM's playing it safe. I say African civets. Come on, civets. Or an owl. I would like an owl. Now, oh no, it's a steenbok. Oh dear. Darn. And so we get two species of genets, small spotted and large spotted genets. And James Richard is wondering, do they compete for food and which dominates over the other? Where they overlap, they definitely compete for food, but they also don't all sort of live in the same area. The small spotted genet can live in drier areas, but I would probably say being they're not that much different in size, so I'd say the large spotted is slightly, no, I don't think it is slightly larger, so maybe it does dominate, but with a lot of things, a lot of animals avoid confrontation rather than fighting, so you might find they might try avoid each other. So you might notice these large piles of sand next to the road, and that's to repair the mitre drains, these big bumps that we go over. But from VM and myself, it's been a joy having you on the Sunset Safari with us, and hopefully we'll find some leopards finally on the Sunrise Safari tomorrow. So don't forget to join us, and for the last few minutes or moments of drive, let's go to Jamie so she can bid you adieu.
Oh, we've come to the end of our Sunset Safari, and we'll have to follow up on Karula tomorrow morning and see where she's disappeared off to. Another beautiful evening awaits us, and a big thank you to Jean-Dre for all of your fantastic camera work, as well as to Jerry and to Lou in Final Control. Thank you to you all, and have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. We'll catch you tomorrow. Bye-bye.